How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed, Daf 30 of Masechta BavaKama. Friends. Should I roll up my sleeves? What do the people say? Yes or no? Alright, 1 second. Alright, that means I'm getting serious over here. Alright, we're learning BavaKama today. Here we go. We're going to start in Daf Lamed Amud Aleph, 2 lines at the Mishnah at the top of the page. Lamed Amud Aleph, Mishnah at the top of the page. Says the Mishnah. Hashefich Maim b'Shus Harab. Exciting times. BavaKama, you know. Hashefich Maim. I got my noise cancelling headphones over here. I think that it worked out okay the other day. So we'll keep going with them. They could do a better job than the other ones I was using. Those weren't that great. Somebody who spills water into the Rishus Harabim. You hear this? Reuven spills water into the Rishus Harabim, and then Shimon gets hurt. So Reuven needs to pay for his damages. Hamatznias Akots. Somebody who hides away a thorn, vezaschuchis, or glass, v'agoder es gidro b'kotzim, somebody who fences his fence with thorns, v'geder shenafel Rishus Harabim, or a fence that fell into Rishus Harabim. All right, v'huzku boinachem, and people got hurt. Chayv b'nizkon. So the perpetrator, the fellow who is responsible for these things, Reuven, let's call him, is going to be chayiv to pay for the injured party's injuries. Says the Gemara, Amarav, says Rav, Lishanu Elo. I feel like I've been taking more deep breaths with these Babylons. Got all sorts of stuff going on over here. I guess, I don't know. Is there like a connection between like noise cancelling headphones and deep breaths? Maybe we need to do a peer-reviewed study. I was in a groove with somebody, and she's like a virologist or something. She like studies viruses, and she was reviewing a paper. Like when a paper needs to be peer-reviewed, like she's like a peer reviewer. She's like one of those peer-reviewing people. Amarav says Rav Lashanu Ella Dinitnefu Kelev Bamoyim. That is only if his clothing got dirty in the water. It's like we said it's be'etzim like we said just the other day, right? What was that situation? Right, Nishba Kada B'Shus Harabim Echad B'Mayim. Rav said the same thing. They were talking about when his clothing gets dirty, and we're saying because it's talking about that he was not mafkir the water, so he still owns it. So it's be'etzim shore, so he's chayiv if he damages vessels. So Rav Loshanu El Dinit Nefu Kelev B'Amoyim, that his clothing or his vessels got ruined. Haval hu atzmo, but if the fellow slipped on the water and bumped his head, potter. Reuven would be potter because karka olim izikasu, right? He bumped his head on the ground, so Reuven is not chayiv for that. Meaning, if Reuven spilled his water into the Rishus Harabim, and then Shimon slips on it and bumps his head, so the water was the catalyst, right? Be'etzim, it was a grama. The water caused him to bump his head on the ground, but Reuven's not going to be chayiv for that. Omar le Rav Huna li Rav. Says Rav Huna to Rav, Lo ye ela kirifsho. It should be like his, Rashi says, Hamashich zvalu b'Rishus Harabim. Like if he throws like trash, I guess, into Rishus Harabim. Shouldn't that be the same thing? So, misavar telo tamu maya. Well, do you think it's talking about where the water wasn't completely absorbed, and therefore there were like piles of water that like mixed together with the dirt, and therefore created some kind of like, I don't know, trash kind of thing? With the Tamumai, it's talking about where the water was absorbed. Okay, therefore it's different. I don't know. Did I understand that correctly? Honestly, I'm not exactly sure. Alright, how come Rav needed to say this Inyan twice, right? How come Rav needed to say right, by the other day in the context of Nishbir Akado, and in this context when it says Ashofech Maim, how come you have to teach the same thing twice, right? Which is that if he retains ownership over the contents, and then the person gets his clothing gets ruined or something, so then he's going to be chayiv. How come he's bad? Teaching this thing twice? So chad b'mosachama, v'chad b'mosakishamim. Well, it's teaching us two things: that he'd be chayiv whether he does it during the summer, right, when it's not raining and the streets are cleaner, or whether he does it in the winter when things are muddier and stuff. The Tanya is willing to brisa called Elu Sha'amru, that all of these things that they said, poskin bivosein, that you can open up your drains into Rosh Hashanah, v'gorfen ma'irasein, and you can, scrape out your, pits of stuff, but you can basically throw your schmutz into Rosh Hashanah. B'mos hachama ein lo en rishus, v'mos hageshamim yesh lo en rishus. So you can't do it during the summer when I guess the roads are a little bit cleaner, and you have the power washers that are power washing. But in the winter, so not during the summer, but during the winter when things are messy already, it's raining and all sorts of stuff, it's dirtier. So that's when you're allowed to kind of open up your drains and stuff into Rishus Harabim. And even though you're allowed to, still if they cause damage, if you're opening up your drain then cause damage to somebody, so you're going to nonetheless be chayiv. And Rav was saying that you would be chayiv in these situations, both. Therefore, you'd be chayiv whether you did it in the summer when you're not allowed to, or even if you did it during the winter when maybe you are allowed to, but still you'd be chayiv if anything happened. Hamatznias hakots v'chulei. So somebody who hides away a thorn. So Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan l'shanu ela mafriach. Okay, so when we talk about the fence of thorns, that we say that if somebody got hurt, right? So if Reuven had a thorny fence and Shimon got hurt, so that's only if the thorny fence is kind of like like outstretched in the Rishus Harabim of a Mitzamtzim. But if he kept the fence just on his property, that is by Rishus Harabim low, then that would be okay. My timer, how come? My timer potter. How come he's potter? Amarvacha brei dravika lefisha indarkin shalbni odom lischakech bigsolim, because the people don't usually scratch against the walls, and therefore he's not responsible for that. All right, fine. All right, wait, let me just see something. Okay. Okay, fine. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hamatznia kotzosov zchuchiosov, the soch kosel shel chaveru. All right, uvabal kosel v'sosar koslo v'nofalu shesaram v'ziku chayv hamatznia. Chavet, did you hear that? I'll read it again. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hamatznia kotzosov v'zchuchiosov, the soch kosel shel chaveru. Reuven comes with his thorns and with his glass, and he puts it into Shimon's wall. Because he doesn't tell Shimon, he just goes and stashes away his hazardous materials in Shimon's wall. Uvabal kosel, comes Shimon, v'sasar koslo, and he demolished his wall. And guess what happened? V'nafalu Rishus Harabim, these hazardous materials fell into Rishus Harabim v'yiziku, and somebody got hurt. Chayv hamatzniya. So Reuven, who put his hazardous materials in Shimon's wall, is going to be chayiv if Shimon subsequently demolishes his wall and the hazardous materials fall into Rishus Harabim. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan l'shanu el b'kosel ra'ur. Now, says Rabbi Yochanan that this is specifically by a shaky wall, that Reuven should have known that it was going to be knocked down soon. Aval b'kosel bari. But if it was a healthy wall, that there was no reason to assume that it was going to be knocked down, hamatzniya potter v'chayiv bala kosel. So then the Reuven, who put it in this wall that was a strong, sturdy wall, and then comes Shimon and knocks down the wall, and these things fall into Rishus Harabim, and Shimon just kind of leaves it there. So Shimon is going to be chayiv because Reuven did not assume that this wall was going to be demolished anytime soon, and it's Shimon's responsibility. Ravina says, Ravina Zosomeris, this says, Hamachase Boro Bidolyo Shel Chavero. If you have a person who covers up his pit with his friend's bucket, right? Meaning, in our case, with the thorns, so Reuven had a thorn, which is betzim a bor, right? It's something dangerous. And he betzim covered up his thorns in Shimon's wall. Now, Shimon's wall was flimsy, so Reuven had to assume that Shimon might knock it down. So Reuven had to think that through. So similarly, if Reuven had a pit, a bor b'shisarabim that he's responsible for, if Reuven had a bor b'shisarabim that he's responsible for, and he takes Shimon's bucket and covers his pit with the bucket, again, Reuven needs to think that through and assume that Shimon might take his bucket. Right? So again, Amar Ravinas also merits this says, a fellow who covers his pit, his liability, with his friend's bucket, uva bal dli vinotol dalyo, and Shimon comes and takes his bucket, chayev bal abor. Reuven is going to be chayev, right? Just like Reuven had his thorns and he put them in Shimon's shaky wall, and Shimon demolished his shaky wall, Reuven is chayev. Here also, Reuven had a pit. He took Shimon's bucket and covered his pit. Shimon took back his bucket. Reuven is going to be chayev. Pshita, isn't that obvious? Well, Ma'u D'Tema may have thought, Hasamu D'lo Ava Yoda Le D'lo Due. Aval Hacha D'Yoda Le Havale Lo Due Kamash Malon. If I understand correctly, in the case of the thorns and stuff, Shimon didn't know that Reuven had his thorns and stuff there, so there was, how could Shimon have any responsibility here? Reuven stashed his dangerous things in Shimon's shaky wall. Shimon then demolished the shaky wall. He didn't even know that Reuven's stuff was there. So there was really not much he could have done. How can we say that Shimon is responsible? However, in this case, when Shimon goes, he says, oh, there's my bucket. It's covering Reuven's pit. Well, in that case, I guess he knows that it's Reuven's pit, so he should have told Reuven, arguably, that, hey, I'm taking back my bucket. Better do something. So therefore, Shimon does have a responsibility there. No, Kamash Milan, he doesn't. It's all Reuven's responsibility. If Reuven covers his pit with Shimon's bucket, he has to assume that Shimon might reclaim his bucket, in which case, Reuven's going to be responsible for the open pit. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Chasidim Arishenim, Ayu Matzniim, Kutzoseim, V'zchuchioseim, B'sochstoseim, Umaymikin Loin Gimul Tvachim, Kidei Shelo, Ya'akiv HaMachresha. You hear that, friends? Let's read it again. Chasidim Arishonim, the original Chasidim, Ayu Matzniim, Kutzoseim, V'zchuchioseim, they would stash away their thorns and their glass inside of their fields, and they would put it deep, 3 tefachim deep, deep in the field, so that the plows shouldn't even get to them. Right? They would basically stash them away in a place where there's no chance of anybody getting hurt. Rav Sheshes would throw them into a fire, again, to completely destroy them. Rava Shdilu Bidiglos, Rava would throw them into the Euphrates. Tigris? Chidekel. The Nar Pras, I think, is Euphrates. Chidekel, I think, is the Tigris. It's the Tigris. It's the Tigris. In Iraq. The Yidden used to live in Iraq. The Yidden don't live in Iraq anymore. It didn't work out over there. Okay. Where am I? So Rav Shdilu B'diglas, he would throw it into the Tigris. Amr of Yehuda says of Yehuda, Haman deboy lemehevi chsida, a fellow wants to be a chosid, l'kai mile de nezikin, he should learn Masechta Nezikin. There was a Gemara in Masechta Brachis that who was saying that he doesn't understand the earlier generations. They all of their learning was in Nezikin, right? They said, and then you definitely mentioned Rav Yehuda. So Rav Yehuda was like a big, I guess Nezikin was his jam, I guess. All right, fine. So if a fellow wants to be a chosid, he should learn Masechta Nezikin. Chever, all right. Well, here's our chance. We're learning Masechta Nezikin. We're learning Seder Nezikin. So this is lekayim mila. It doesn't say just learn, but right. In a medrash or ikra la amaisa, you have to be mekayim the nezikin. And I guess the point is like this: you have these thorns and stuff. How do you dispose of them in a way that nobody should get hurt? And thinking about the other fellow, I guess. Omar, so Rav Omar mile de ovis. Ovis, what's all like Pirkei Ovis? I guess that sounds nice. V'amila mile de brachis. Some say, I guess Masech de brachis. Interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. Oh, excuse me. Alright, let's go right there. Where are we at? Okay. New Mishnah. Okay. Here we go. Hamotzi es tivno v'kasho l'rshus harabim lizvolim. A fellow takes out his straw to Rishus Harabim, Lizvolim. He wants to make it compost, okay? He takes out his straw to Rishus Harabim, plops it down, leaves it there, and the the idea is that over time, it will become compost. It will be gevaldig. I mean, it will get better. So let's say he took out $100 worth of straw, and he's going to leave it out. It's going to become compost. It's going to be now worth $200. Okay? And somebody gets hurt. Somebody, I don't know, falls on the compost and he gets hurt. Chayiv benisko. So let's say Ruvain, the guy who took out the straw, he's chayiv to pay for Shimon's damages, for his injuries. And anybody who comes and grabs the straw from Rishus Harabim, Gesundheit, Chaparain, right? Because Rishus Harabim, right? Ruvain can't just it's not, Rishus Harabim doesn't belong to Ruvain that he can just put out his straw and start composting in the Rishus Harabim, right? So if anybody gets hurt, anybody gets injured by this straw that's composting, Ruvain is chayiv. If anybody takes the straw that's composting, Gesundheit. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Lama says Shimon ben Gamliel, Kol ha-mekalkalin b'Rishus Harabim, all mekalkalin in Rishus Harabim, v'yiziku, and anybody gets hurt, injured, chayovim l'shalim. So Ruvain in this case, right? The putter outer would be chayav to pay for the injuries. V'chol hakodem boin zoche, and anybody who chaps arayin. Now, ha'ofech es hagolol b'Rishus Harabim, somebody who flips over the dung in Rishus Harabim, compost and dung. V'huzak boin acher, and somebody gets hurt, somebody gets injured, chayav b'nisko, the dung flipper is going to be chayav to pay for the injuries. All right. Lema masizn lo Rabbi Yehuda. So let's say that let's say that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya is learned by Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, b'shas utzoas zvolim. That when a person brings out his, stuff to compost, so Adam, where am I? Adam motzi zvalu l'Rishus Harabim. All right, so a person can bring out his trash, I guess, to Rishus Harabim. V'tzovro kol shloshim yom, and he can leave it there for 30 days. K'dei she'nishof b'ragle Adam v'ragle behema, so that the people will step on it and stuff and that will help it compost maybe? I don't know. That this is why Joshua was manchil Eretz Yisrael to the Yidden. Right? The Yidden, of course, have been in Eretz Yisrael for a long time, from the time of Joshua, and it was for this reason, right, under these conditions that Joshua, bequeathed, came to Eretz Yisrael with the Yidden. If I understand correctly, it's so that the Yidden should be looking out for each other. It shouldn't be such a society where everybody's, going crazy at each other and everyone's so makbid, like me with the sunflower people. I don't like when the people are walking around with the sunflower seeds and the click-clacking. It drives me crazy. For people like me, that's not why Yoshua brought the people into Eretz Yisrael, that they should be get so annoyed at each other. Fakert, people should say, a sunflower guy, I love you. You're you're my brother. So that's what we should really strive to. We should we should love the sunflower people. We should love the sunflower people. We should love the sunflower people. That's why Yoshua brought us into Eretz Yisrael, so that we should love each other. That's just Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, of course. And we're saying that the Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yehuda, but anyways, okay, whatever. So, all right. All right. So we're saying that the Mishnah, though, is not actually like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that, we got to love the sunflower people, and therefore, somebody goes and he brings his compost out to Rosh Hashanah and say, "Oh, my brother, I love you." But that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and the Mishnah seems to be saying a little bit different, which is, if anybody gets injured, you're in trouble. All right. I feel the same, Rabbi Yehuda. No, you can even say that the Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda. Moda Rabbi Yehuda shem ezik mishalim masha ezik. Look, even Rabbi Yehuda, who says you have to love thy sunflower fellow, but if the sunflower, spits his sunflower seed in somebody's eye, so he's going to be chayav to pay for the damages. So if you're going in for a hug, right? You see a sunflower guy with his pocket full of sunflower seeds, and he takes one out and he's putting it in his mouth, and you just go and give him a big hug, and he spits out a seed in your eye. So, okay, Beseder, maybe you love him, but he still needs to pay for the eye doctor. All right. So, V'atanan, we learn in the Mishnah. Rabbi says Rabbi Yehuda, B'ner Chanukah Potter Shehu Bershus. Okay, and we learn in a Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda says that if it's Ner Chanukah, Potter Mipnei Shehu Bershus. Right? That okay. So my lab Mishum Mishus Bezdin. Right? Meaning we had said, right? This was we had learned this the other day, right? Maybe. And is this referring to, what is that? B'nei Chanukah b'perek hakon eston l'dir diktani gomel. Yeah, shayotam pishtam b'diuk. Yeah, we learned this the other day, right? That if the fellow, he has his camel and there's flax on the camel, and the store owner has his candle outside, and the flax gets lit on the fire. So we say that the store owner is chayiv because he put his candle outside in the Shusharam. But if it was Ner Chanukah, so then he is potter, right? So again, V'atanan Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, B'ner Chanukah potter, that by Ner Chanukah the store owner is potter, because he's allowed to. My love, Mishum Mishus Bezdin. That meaning, since he was allowed to have, since the halacha is that he's allowed to have his Ner Chanukah outside, so therefore he's potter from damages. So therefore Rabbi Yehuda would say that if you're allowed to put out your compost, because that's why Joshua brought the people into Eretz Yisrael, so that people would, just kind of give each other space. So you should be potter, right? Just like we know Rabbi Yehuda says that by, if you have permission to put your Ner Chanukah outside, you're potter from damages. So if you have permission to put your compost outside, I would think that Rabbi Yehuda would say the same thing, that you'd be potter for damages. Where am I? Lo mishum mishus mitzvah. No. The reason why by Ner Chanukah the store owner is potter is not because he simply has permission. No, it's because he has permission in the context of a mitzvah. That's why he's potter. Titanis will learn in the Brayso. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says Rabbi Yehuda b'ner Chanukah potter, that by Ner Chanukah the store owner would be potter mipnei rishus mitzvah, because he has permission in the context of a mitzvah. And therefore, in the context of a mitzvah, Rabbi Yehuda would say potter. But in the context of the compost, even though you should love your brother and let him compost in Rosh Hashanah, still, if somebody gets hurt, in that case, even though he was allowed to, still he would be chayiv for the damages. Only by a rishus of a mitzvah would he be potter for the damages. Tashma coming here. Kol elu she'amru mutar in the kalkal b'shus harabim. All of those things that we said that you're allowed to, make a mess in rishus harabim, right? For example, like opening up the drains and things like that. Nonetheless, if they caused damage, then you're going to be chayav to pay. Rabbi Yehuda potter. Rabbi Yehuda says it's potter. Omer of Nachman masnisin shelo b'shas otzaz volim. But says Rav Nachman, yes, but our Mishnah is not at the time when they would empty out it was not during these times when they would be emptying out the drains, right? So meaning, Rabbi Yehuda says that if they were allowed to be emptying out the drains, that's one thing, but our Mishnah is when you weren't allowed to be emptying the drains, so you could say that it's Rabbi Yehuda and it's Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, fine. Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi tivno v'kasho tnan mishum de misharke. Or Rav Ashi says again, it could be Rabbi Yehuda, but specifically the straw is where you'd be chayiv, because straw people can get hurt on. But other things, maybe you'd say potter, but specifically this, even Rabbi Yehuda would say that you'd be chayiv. Alright. Okay, and then the Mishnah had said, Kol kodem boin zocho. Oh, that whoever takes them, gets them, right? So if Ruvain put out his straw in order to compost, and okay, so if Shimon now comes, so Ruvain took his straw and put it out in Rishus Harabim to compost. Shimon comes and take it. Okay, Seder, Shimon took it. He's allowed to. He's in Rishus Harabim. Amar ben begufon ben beshvachon uziri Omar beshvachon aval lo begufon. Okay, so I kind of alluded to this earlier, that with the compost, so when you put it out, it was so the straw, maybe put out $100 worth of straw, and it's going to become compost, and it's going to be worth $200, right? It's going to get better. So Rav says that if Shimon takes the compost, so he's entitled to take the whole thing, right? He's entitled to take the basically he took the compost. It's now worth $200. He can keep the $200 worth of compost. Whereas Zeiri says no. When he put out straw in the Rishus Harabim, he then utilized the Rishus Harabim. He kind of took the Rishus Harabim for himself in order to upgrade this straw to become compost. So what he used the Rishus Harabim for, which was to make his compost, that is what he's not allowed to do. And Zeiri and if Shimon takes it, so then so it's only the compost, that which he used the Rishus Harabim to for his own uses, right, to make it compost. So the compost is what Shimon can keep, but the straw itself, the value of the straw itself, which was already worth $100 from prior to putting it out in the Rishus Harabim, that Shimon doesn't have the right to take, and so he takes the compost that's now worth $200. That's now worth $200, but he needs to give Ruvain the $100, which was the value of the straw prior to becoming compost. Whereas Rav says no, Shimon's allowed to take the whole thing. Okay, so again, Rav says Rav bein begufon bein bishvachon. Says Rav that Shimon can take the whole thing, right? He takes this compost, and all of it now belongs to, all of the value of $200 belongs to him. Uzeiri Omar, where Zeiri says bishvachon, that Shimon can take the difference between the value of the straw at the time that it was left out in Rishus Harabim and the value of the straw when it became compost, i.e. the $100 increase in value, that he's entitled to. Have a low begufan, but the initial value, the initial $100 that it was worth even before he put it out in Rishus Harabim, that Shimon cannot keep for himself. He needs to give those $100 back to Ruvain. But Ma'akim, if you what's the machlokas between Rav and Zeiri? Rav saver konsu gufan mishum shvachon. Rav says that we fine Ruvain because since he utilized Rishus Harabim for his own use to make compost, so we fine him and say just like the compost you were not allowed to use Rishus Harabim to make, and therefore Shimon is entitled to whatever, can take the compost. But even the base amount also, right, konsu gufon mishum shvachon, that we sort of fine Ruvain even for the base amount, for the initial amount, because because of what he did, right? He used the Rishus Harabim to make compost, so he doesn't just lose out on the compost, but even for the initial amount as well. As Zeiri Savar, whereas Zeiri says lo konsu gufon mishum shvachon, whereas Zeiri says no. Look, he used the Rishus Harabim to create compost, so it's the value of the compost, right? The difference between the initial amount, initial value, and the current value now that it's compost, that is what Shimon can take for himself, but the initial value he has no right to, and Shimon would have to give back to Ruvain the initial $100. Tanan, we learn in our Mishnah that a fellow who flips over dung in Rishus Arabim, v'huzak boen, and somebody gets hurt, somebody gets injured in the dung, v'huzak boen acher, chayav benizko. Okay, so that's the seif of our Mishnah, right? The seif of our Mishnah says that if somebody flips over the dung in Rishus Arabim, and then Reuven flips over some dung, Shimon gets injured by the dung, so Reuven is going to be chayav, okay, for Shimon's injuries. Ve'ilu kol hakodim zocha lo katone, but it doesn't say anything about Shimon being allowed to take the dung. So now dung is something that is already gevaldig, right? It's already, right? It's not going to compost any more than it already is. It's already manure. So here we have something that is be'etzem gufo, right? It's be'etzem gufo, right? It's not, right? It's not. There's not going to be any more shevach. So I would think that according to Rav, people should be able to take the dung, right? Because Rav says that people could take the compost, the value of the compost, as well as the initial value, the base value. Dung only has base value because it's not getting any better. So I would think that according to Rav, people should be able to take the dung. But the Mishnah doesn't say that people can take the dung. So v'ilu kol hakodim zocha lo katani, it doesn't say that the people can take it. So Tana the Reisha word in the safe. Well, it says in the Reisha of the Mishnah that the people can chaparain, right, by the straw. So guess what? It applies also to the dung, and people can take the dung. All right, where am I? So Tana the Reisha word in the Sefer. V'ha tani Allah, but we learned about in a brisa asurim mishum gazel, that you're not allowed to take it because it's theft. Ki katani asurin mishum gazel. No, when it says that it's also for theft, akulam asisin kari, it's going on the entire Mishnah. La also shekadam v'zocha, for the person who took it. So meaning, yes, people can come and take the dung, just like they can come and take the straw. Now, once they take it, it's theirs. If somebody then comes and takes it from them, it would be theft. That's what it means. But you can already take the dung, however. V'ha lo katani hachi, but it doesn't say this. But it does not say this, the Tanan, as we learn, or the Tanya, as we learn in a brisa. Hamotzi tivno v'kasho l'shusarabim lizvolim. A person who brings out his straw to Shusarabim to make compost, v'huzak boen acher, and somebody gets injured, chayiv b'nizko. So Reuven, who brought out the straw, is going to be chayiv to pay for Shimon's injuries. V'chol hakodem boen zocha, and if anybody comes and takes the straw, gesundheit, it's theirs. Umuter mishum gezel, and there's no issue of theft. Now somebody who flips dung, right? Reuven flips over shtickle dung in Rishus Harabim. V'huzak boyen acher, and Shimon gets injured. Chayiv, so Reuven's chayiv to pay for Shimon's injuries. V'osu mishum gazel, and you're not allowed to take it. It's theft. So we see that the dung is off limits, right? We're saying that the brisa seems to be pretty clear. You're allowed to take the you're allowed to take the straw. You're not allowed to take the dung. So therefore, it's a kasha on Rav, because Rav says that that when it comes to the straw, Shimon can take the shevach, the compost, the value of the compost, as well as the initial value. Could take the whole thing. So if that's the case, he should be able to take the dung as well. But here we're saying you cannot take the dung. So Omer Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Golol Karomis, are you really asking a kasha about the compost from the dung? Davashezbo shevach konsu gufo mishum shvacho. Davashezbo shevach lo konsu. Look, when Rav says that just like Shimon can take the compost he can also take the base value. So something, right? What did we just say? We said davar sheyesh bo shevach konseguf mishum shvacho. Something that increases in quality and value. For example, the compost. Right? He takes the straw, puts it out in Rishus Harabim to become compost. So something that becomes better. So we say not only can Shimon take have the compost, but he can also take the value of the initial value as well. He can keep all of it. Meaning, so something that gets better and that Reuven's utilizing Rishus Harabim in order to make his straw into compost, we find him and we could say, Shimon, you can take the whole thing. However, davar she'ein bo shevach, something which doesn't get better, like dung, it's already great. So lo, kansu, there's no knas over there, and therefore you are not entitled to take that. Shimon's not allowed to take that. So therefore it's not a kasha on Rav, because Rav is talking about a scenario where you have something that increases in quality, that straw becomes compost, but when it comes to dung, it already is what it is, and therefore in that case there's no fines, and you're not allowed to take it. Ibarlu, they asked in the yeshiva. All right, Ibarlu, the divrei omer kontsugufon mishum shvachon. So according to Rav, who says that Shimon can take all, the entire compost, he doesn't have to pay back Reuven for any of it. The alter konsinon, olchi maisi shvacha konsinon. Do we find him immediately, or only once it becomes compost? Right? Meaning, according to Rav, if Reuven puts out the straw, and then over time it becomes compost, and Shimon takes it now that it's compost, we say that we find Reuven, and Reuven loses all of it. Shimon can take all of it. Now, is that only once it's become compost? Once it's been sitting in Rishus Harabim and it's become compost, we say that Shimon can take the compost, and not only can he have the value of the compost, but also he can have the initial value as well. What if Reuven Pashit put out the straw, half an hour later comes Shimon and takes the straw? So there's no compost, right? It hadn't had a chance to become compost. It's only the base value. So when it was compost, Rav had said that Shimon's entitled to the compost plus, and that includes the base value as well. What if it didn't yet have a chance to become compost? All it is the base value. Would Rav say that Shimon's entitled to just take the straw? So Tashma, come in here. Irinon Golo. Well, from the fact that we mention Golo, and that we compare, that we asked a kasha and Rav from the dung. So it sounds like even something that is only a base value and has not yet become any better, he would be entitled to. But v'tizbira ki irinon golol mikame delishani Rav Nachman. Yeah, but we asked the kasha about the dung before we had Rav Nachman's answer, which was that you can't compare dung, which won't get any better, to straw, which will get better. Levasu deshani Rav Nachman miikal emirma golol klal. But once Rav Nachman pointed out that these are apples and oranges situation, you can't really bring a proof from the golol, from the dung. So, all right, I guess that we don't necessarily resolve that question. All right. Let us say that it's machlokes tanoim. Let us say that this machlokes between Rav and Zeiri about is Shimon entitled to the value of the compost as well as the initial value? Right, that's Rav's opinion. And Zeiri says that he's only entitled to the value of the compost, but he has to give back, he has to return the initial value. So let's say that this machlokes between Rav and Zeiri is like another machlokes, lemek ketanoi. It says machlokes tanoi. Shtar shekosub bo ribis. If you have a document that in the document is ribis, is interest. Now, obviously, of course, it's also midoraisa interest. So let's say Shimon lent Reuven $1,000, and and it says, I'm lending you $1,000, you have to pay me back $1,500, whatever it is, right? You have to pay back with interest. So that's not allowed. So the shaila is, does Shimon, in making, in lending with ribis, does he lose out on everything? Right? The interest, right? Shimon loses out on the interest that he was hoping to collect, as well as the base amount that he lent as well, the $1,000. Or does he lose out? He can't, of course, collect the interest, the $500 interest, but the $1,000 perhaps he could reclaim. Okay. So where am I? So let's start over. Sulema ketano. Let's say it's like a machlokas tanoim. Shtar shekasubo ribis. If you have a document that details a loan that was lent with interest. Konsin also ve'eno gove lo es a keren velo es a ribis dive Reb Meir. Says Reb Meir that Shimon loses everything. He cannot collect even the initial $1,000 that he lent Reuven. Gove es a keren avalo es a ribis. Whereas the Chacham say, look, Shimon forfeits the interest, the $500, of course, but he can nonetheless. What's the word I'm thinking of? I don't think it's reclaim, but he can he can I don't know. Not reclaim. Can salvage. Wow, that's not even a kind of salvage. At least salvage. I think that's probably the word, or at least very similar to the word that I was probably picking my brain for. So guys, you could at least salvage. I don't like that word. You can at least get back the. Maybe there is a something that I'm looking for, but you can get back the principal amount. Okay, here we go. Salvage. Okay. Avalos aribis. Fine. Okay. So lema Rav Damakra Meir Ziru Damakra Bonim. But let's say that Rav, who says that with the compost, Reuven forfeits everything, the base amount, the compost amount. So he's like Reb Meir, who says that Shimon in his loan cannot salvage, reclaim any of it. He loses all of it. And let's say that Zeiri, who says that no, Reuven loses the sort of value of the compost, but he can, he can still claim the initial value. So that is like the Rabbanon, who say that Shimon, when he lends the money with interest, loses out on the interest, but not the base amount. Omar loch Rav, ono de amrei afilu Rabbanon. So Rav will say nisht. Both, my opinion here regarding the compost jives with both Reb Meir, obviously, because Reb Meir says that in the loan, in the interest loan, everything is lost. So that's obviously like Rav, who says that Reuven with his straw loses everything. But even the rabbis who say that by interest the interest is forfeited, but the base amount remains intact. So he says, I see like the rabbis, look, by interest, the rabbis say that the principle remains intact, because at the end of the day, the principal amount he was allowed to lend, right? Shimon lent Reuven $1,000. That, of course, is allowed and even encouraged. The issue was with the interest. But over here, by the compost, by putting out the straw in Rosh Hashanah, Karen Gufa Kamazik. See, even just putting out the straw itself is a dangerous thing. Somebody can get hurt. Uziiri Omalach, and Zeiri Oichit will say, Ono Damra Fil Reb Meir. Zeiri, who says that by the compost, Reuven only forfeits the compost, but not the base amount. Reuven can get that back. Says Zeiri that Reb Meir, who says that by interest the lender loses all, would agree with me, however, by the compost, that Reuven would only lose the value of the compost, not the base value, because Ad Kan Reb Meir says that the lender forfeits all, Ela de Mishas Ksiva de Ovid Suma. Because already from the time that the document was written, and what does Rashi say? Where am I? Come on, Rashi, where are you? David, some olav neshech ve'over below tesimun. Right at the time that already he wrote the document, it was rotten. It was a problem. Avalacha miyemer demazik. But over here by the compost, when he puts out the straw, who says anybody was going to get hurt in the future? We didn't know that. So therefore, Reb Meir would agree with me that by the compost, only the value of the compost must be forfeited, but not the value of the straw itself. So let's say that the machlokes between Rav and Zeiri is like the following machlokes tanoim. Nemekani tanoim amotzi tivno v'kasher l'reshus harabim l'zvolim. That somebody who brings out his straw to Reshus harabim to make compost, v'huzak bo'en acher. And right, so Reuven brings out the straw, and Shimon gets injured. Chayiv b'nisko, Reuven needs to pay for the injury. V'chol hakodem ben zocha, and anybody who takes the straw, zocha, zochaloi, v'asun mishum gezel, and it's also because of theft. All right, Shimon ben Gamliel. Wait 1 second. Is this This wasn't 1 second. Okay, so this is a brisa. Okay. Rav Shimon Gamliel, or Mrs. Rav Shimon Gamliel, call mekaklin b'shus harabim. Anybody who damages in b'shus harabim v'ziku, and they damaged chayov and l'shalem, you have to pay, right? So, okay, fine. Reuven would have to pay for Shimon's injuries. And anybody who takes it is allowed. Umutarin mishum gezel. There's no issue of theft. Now, hagu fakasha. I don't understand. In the Reisha, the BavaKama had said, Omer kol hakodem bo'en zocha. On the one hand, you said anybody who takes the straw, Zachala, it's yours. But then immediately, right after that, you say, and anybody who takes it, it's theft. You're not allowed to take it. I don't understand. Are you allowed to take it? Aren't you allowed to take it? Rather, it must be that this is what he's saying. That if you take the added value, the value of the compost, that you're allowed. But the principal amount, you're not entitled to, like Zeiri. Also, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel lemeimar comes Reb Shimon ben Gamliel to say, "Afilu gufon nami kol hakodem bo'en zocha." That even the base amount also kol hakodem bo'en zocha. There's no issue of theft, and that is like Rav. Now, l'Zeiri vade tanoi. So according to Zeiri, he says, "Look, this is definitely a machlokas tanoim. I can't possibly argue that Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says like me." That, because I say that you're not allowed to take the base amount. Reb Shimon Gamliel says you can. But l'Rav milema tanoihi. But Rav may say it's taka not a machlokes tanoim. Rav would say that his opinion that you're allowed to take the base amount in addition to the compost value, he would say that both the BavaKama and Reb Shimon Gamliel agree with him. That Omar Lach, he would say, Rav would say, Look, BavaKama and Reb Shimon Gamliel both hold that in principle, Me'ikar Adin, Shimon can take not just the value of the compost, but also the base value. The kasha is it a halacha ve'morinkin? Is it that, yes, technically, Shimon can take not just the value of the compost, but also the base amount? The question is, do we tell that to Shimon? Do we say to Shimon, you could take it all? Or do we say to Shimon, look, just take the compost? Even though, yes, Me'ikar Adin, he could also take the base amount, but what do we, if Shimon comes to ask the Shaila, how do we advise him? The Itmar was stated, Rav says, Rav name of Rav, Halacha ve'ein morinkin. That the halacha is that Shimon can take it all, but if he comes to ask, can I take it all or just the value of the compost? We say just the value of the compost, and that is like the BavaKama. Rav Ada bar Ahava Omar says Rav Ada bar Ahava halacha umorinkin. That the halacha is that Shimon can take also the value of the straw itself, and if he asks the shaila, we advise it. We tell him so. We tell him as much that you could take it all, and that's like Shimon Gamliel. Ini, is this really true? For Rav Huna, after Choshle. But Rav Huna would, meaning Rav Huna on the one hand is saying that Talacha ben Morin came, but on the other hand he would put out these barley kernels or something and say, whoever wants to chaparain can chaparain. Right? Well, what does Rashi say? After Choshle, sorin klufin sheshatach ish echad b'shusar kadesh is yabshu v'efkir Rav Huna v'hor shekodem bohem zacha. That somebody put out his barley or whatever to dry, and Rav Huna said, look, everyone, you could take it, all of it. So Rav Ada bar Hava, after Slikusta, and Rav Ada bar Hava would put out, some kind of date leftovers from like beer or something. So Rav Ada bar Hava Kishmaitis, Rav Ada bar Hava, I understand, right? He had said, Alacha u'morin that you could take not just the composted amount, but the base amount as well. El Rav Huna, Lema Haderbe. So should we say that Rav Huna changed his mind? Hanu Musarin Havu. No, in this particular case, this guy was already warned, like, hey man, don't do this, and he did it anyways. That is why the people were allowed to take it all. But in a general situation, Rav Huna would say that you could take the sort of composted value, the additional value, but not the base value. Wow, that was another big daf in Masechta BavaKama. Well, we did a lot of stuff. The first part we were like spilling water in Rosh Hashanah, and the thorns and that kind of stuff, and then we just learned about this compost, Machlokas Rav and Zeir, about can you take the additional amount, or just additional amount? What about the base amount? Rav says also the base amount. Zeir says just additional amount. All right, interesting stuff. All right, peace out.